You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Time now for a background to our conversation, and it's packaged by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Proliferation of small arms and light weapons in parts of the country has become a concern to all, especially leaders who have had sleepless nights as they plan to change this narrative. No doubt, efforts and measures have been made to mop them off the streets, but the high volume makes it seem near impossible. Reports indicate that proliferation of small arms and light weapons have resulted in armed conflicts, the displacement of people, organized crimes, and acts of terrorism, thereby undermining the peace, development, and security of Nigerians, and by extension, Africa. Hence, its eradication becomes imminent. Many have tagged corruption and poor governance as the bane of small arms proliferation in Nigeria, with many politicians weaponizing poverty, hailing it to tool for exploitation. For instance, political thuggery has continually become the order of the day as they carry out instructions of their political godfathers, even if it's to maim. Continuous acts of terrorism as well as kidnappings cannot be forgotten as well. This explains the essence of the Counter-Terrorism Summit in Abuja, with the theme strengthening regional cooperation and institution building to address the evolving threats of terrorism. This was where the Deputy United Nations Secretary General Amina Mohammed said the epicenter of terrorism has shifted from the Middle East region to sub-Saharan Africa. Now, what more should the African leaders be doing to stem the tide of proliferation of small arms and light weapons? And are there new measures that can put an end to the flow in Nigeria? Guests will be addressing these issues soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background report. And already seated with us in the studio for the discussion is Dr. Kabir Adamu, Security Risk Management Expert. We welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right, we have also been joined by Ibrahim Ahmed Katsina, retired ADG, Department of State Services, former security advisor to Governor Masari, and MDC Peace Builders Security Concepts, and Director Monitoring and Evaluation at the National Institute for Security Studies, Abuja. A pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And not done, we have also been joined by AIG Abutu Yaro, retired AIG Zone 13 and former CP Edo, Zamfara, and Imo States CP Federal Operations, Commander Counter-Terrorism Training School, Port Harcourt. Good to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning.
And we also have joining us here in the studio Dr. Adam Abdullahi, Senior Research Fellow and Head of Department Defense and Security Studies, National Defense College, Nigeria, Abuja. He's an expert on security, terrorism, insurgency, and counter-insurgency. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning.
And from our just studio is Major Gabriel Adofiku, retired, former Secretary General, retired Army, Navy, and Air Force Officers Association, Development Management and Security Consultant, CEO, Damex Consultants Limited. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. It's also a regular here.
Good morning. Welcome.
All right, let's begin this conversation. Let me begin with Kabir Adamu. What do we know about proliferation of small arms and light weapons and its impact on Nigeria?
Thank you very much. It is an existential challenge to our polity. Almost every security threat element that we have in the country, the proliferation of small arms and light weapons contribute to it. So in simple terms, you can say it's the driver of insecurity. Several studies have been conducted by both national and international bodies that have given an indication of the magnitude of the problem of small arms and light weapons within Nigeria and within the West African sub-region. The most recent one by the UN, I think around 2012, indicated that the challenge the magnitude is about maybe 10 million small arms and light weapons in circulation, and of that, about 6.5 million are in Nigeria, which makes, so if you pick the 15 countries of the sub-region, Nigeria has the greatest challenge. So what ECOWAS did in 1998 is to come up with a moratorium for to support the eradication of the challenge of small arms and light weapons. And by, I think, 2009, it came out with a convention where it advised all the 15 member states to have structures, what it called commissions, for eradicating small arms and light weapons. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we dragged our feet. We started with the establishment of committees, presidential committees, and I think that went on until 2021. Before then, there was a national task force with a very long mandate. And then by 2021, then I think President Buhari passed an executive order for the creation of a center for small arms and light weapons, which is currently domiciled in the Office of the National Security Advisor. That center has gone ahead to do a lot of work, including the establishment of regional centers, as it were, in all the 6 geopolitical zones to mobilize effort toward the eradication of small arms and light weapons. Aside that, almost all the government ministries, departments, and agencies that have responsibility for security are also contributing to that. So the police, as an example, from time to time would mop up small arms and light weapons. The military will do that. Customs, name them. I think just over the weekend in Sokoto State, if I'm right, the customs there came out with a statement that they've confiscated, I think it was explosives or something. So from time to time you see that at our borders, either the land border or the air border. So at the moment, we do have the center, and then we have another body, which is a little bit strange, and I'm hoping in the course of the conversation we can talk a little bit about that. Yes, there is the NAT force, like I said, the national a task force that was created, I can't remember the exact year, and then at a point government felt the activities of that task force shouldn't be, then they now created the NAT, turned it into a commission, and that was backed by a bill by the National Assembly. But interestingly, the then president, which is President Buhari, did not give that bill the presidential accent. And so you have the center that is currently operating, and then you have this other body that is also operating. As far as I know, the Office of the National Security Advisor, and in fact, the former government has declared this other NAT force or NATCOM illegal. And not only that, they've even arrested the person who was parading himself as the... But sadly, by the time that was done, that body had gone ahead to recruit thousands of Nigerians, collected money from them, and recruited them. So at the moment, you have a huge pool of persons, quote and unquote, working for that center. In summary, what I'm trying to say is, despite the significance or the magnitude of the challenge, the structure, the platform that we have for managing the challenge is not as coordinated as it should be. I'm very happy with the recently concluded conference in the Office of the National Security Advisor. It has highlighted the challenge, and I'm hoping that the president, because a bill was passed by the 10th Assembly and is currently in the Office of the President. So we're hoping that the President will pass that bill so that the center, which is domiciled in the Office of the National Security Advisor, will have the full powers to continue its work. I want to emphasize that it is an existential threat. Like I mentioned, there is no threat element that we have that this proliferation of small arms and light weapons does not contribute to. So if the president grants his assent and the center now becomes a full commission with the full powers and with the budgetary provision, unlike now that is operating under the Office of the National Security Advisor, then perhaps we'll make traction. In the course of the conversation, we can probably talk about the sources of the small arms and light weapons, and then how the interplay between those sources and the current challenges that we have in the country at the moment.
Yes, indeed, Kabir Adamu, you've raised some pertinent questions. You know, it's a global threat to international peace around the world, and in Africa, it's increasingly becoming a concern to the international community. Let me bring in AIG Abutu Yaro into this conversation now. Let's look at the causative reasons where we're talking about it right now, small arms and light weapons. And what is the problem that defies solution? Because I know that in Egypt in 2020, when President Buhari went for the extraordinary summit of the AU, there was this talk about, you know, silencing the guns and all that. A conversation that keeps recurring. Why is it that we're still talking about it now?
Thank you very much. I want us to understand the issue of arms proliferation within the context of criminal economies that are at work. This criminal economy is not a Nigerian problem per se, it is a worldwide problem. In other parts of the planet, Southeast Asia, this issue is still in debate and government action is going on. Even among the European countries, this issue of illicit arms and proliferation are very, very dominant. And by the way, what constitutes this illicit and small arms? It consists of weapons like pistol, AK-47, any man-portable guns and equipment and explosives that an individual or group can easily carry with ease. That's why we call it man-portable. Some concealed in their bodies, some concealed in their luggage, is all over. The circumstances or the reasons why this prevail is, as I said earlier, because of a criminal economy that is at work, and it's not only us here. If you look at it holistically, from the external perspective, one, we have issues of insecurity within the Maghreb. In the early part of this century, the Maghrebian countries, mainly North African countries consisting of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and to an extent Libya, were all aware of the turmoil and associated situations that existed there. Then coming down nearer to the Sahelian Africa, which is our immediate neighbor, countries of Mali, Niger, Chad, and to an extent, Sierra Leone. The situation existing in that axis has actually created a more endangering arms proliferation situation. And we even, our Lake Chad region is still part of the Sahelian Africa, so to speak. So there are issues and situations existing, as I said, from the Maghreb region to the Sahelian region and cascading to our own area here. And of course, even the Gulf of Guinea is a turbulent zone of the continent that activities there has enabled many arms to go undetected, as well as the Horn of Africa, which are very, very, as we call it in criminal and notorious fact. These are established facts that does not require further debate. That is one angle. Then within the context of our internal existence, there are many, many dysfunctional situations, excuse me, that has given rise or is increasing the crescendo of small arms in Nigeria, particularly lack of proper governance at the grassroots, lack of cohesion, coming back to lack of social contracts between the citizens and the government, and community strife, and basically the inexistence of government at the local level. Since local government were destroyed in this country in the last 20 years, arising from the usurpation of their basic powers by the governors, we discovered that local government no longer exists, providing security control and valves to hold people down to be accountable for what they carry at the local level is not there. And considering the kind of ethnicity we play in our country, the kind of some reasonable level of policy of exclusion and the economic annihilation of some groups or some persons tends to exacerbate the issue of small arms. And beside that, as I said internally, small arms, of course, has been with us, only that is not used for criminal economy. As you can recollect, as far back as 1959, even during the colonial era, Firearms Control Act was enacted by the colonial government. That is to say, at that time, even government was still conscious that small arms were already proliferating in the country. And conscious effort needed to be done to control it. It was not really effective until other further legislation till this day in terms of what Dr. Kebiru described. That is one aspect. And excuse me, I want to remind ourselves too that small arms has been part of our system, maybe largely because of our own kind of colonial experience, so to speak, arising from the British colonial policy of gun-boot diplomacy that actually involved subtle use of arms to force communities and persons to submit to British authority in many ways, actually created a culture of people having arms. It equally predates to the era of transnational organizations, particularly colonial entrepreneurs, bringing guns to communities, gunpowder, gun itself. Actually, the small arm holding of our country started building up over that time. But in the present circumstance, the factors are very clear. As I said earlier, the issues surrounding our strategic neighbors is a worldwide phenomenon, and the lack of governmental cohesion and lack of exclusion, it has added up. But like as we said earlier, as my learned speaker here said earlier, it's kind of work in progress. Legislation exists, governmental control, even a summit has taken place, African summit, on this subject matter, organized to identify lapses, explore possibilities, and innovate action plan to reduce the trend. So the point we are making, or the point I'm submitting at this forum, is that arms control or proliferation is an existential threat. Government effort and individual effort to bring this into manageable proportion is a necessity of our existence. And I would like us to really look at this from the perspective and all society approach, not only government approach, because all of us, government, individuals, community organizations, we have some role to play in checkmating and controlling or monitoring arms movement in the country. And I'm happy to take the note that our government has taken more proactive action. They have set up the National Center for Control of Small and Light Arms, whose act is awaiting presidential assent to make them to be highly operational, just like Dr. Kabir pointed out earlier on. Some other associated activities going on. But the important thing is that it's a threat to our society, it's a threat to our governance, and it's a threat to our statehood. So all hands must be on deck. And the reason that created that is because of criminal economy. The use of arms in the context we're talking about is for criminal benefit and resource aggrandizement.
Thank you, retired AIG Abutu Yaru. Thank you very much for your contributions. Let me now get to Ibrahim Ahmed Katsina. The context of proliferation of small arms and light weapons is such that Nigeria alone cannot defeat it, even in Nigeria. And what still, Kabir Adamu had mentioned the disconnection, the uncoordinated efforts being made because of existence of two different bodies, maybe working at cross purposes and not having the firm backing of the law. So how do we begin to enhance our cooperation with neighbors, especially in Africa, to ensure that these weapons don't keep coming in?
I think, let me build up on what Doctor has said. This problem of small arms and light weapons is a global phenomenon being exploited by the multinational corporations that are making profit out of it. We should take note of that. And they cash on our internal conflicts and other factors that will enable them to supply these weapons no matter what. And we should realize these small weapons and these small arms and light weapons are instruments of authority that gradually an average citizen is realizing. You use it to coerce people, you use it to terrorize people, because without it, how can somebody from village that is uneducated control a large population and begin to put pressure on them to do his bidding? So if we understand this context, we should realize that global networking is key to addressing this problem, as been started by Mr. President. Our neighbors should realize and cooperate with us, and we should put safety valves. Because in Nigeria, we have the regulations, we have the laws, but our problem is the enforcement. Take, for instance, if we do audit to the armories of our security and law enforcement agencies, the number of leakages we find, those are areas we should concentrate and block. Because it's not only the supply. The arms vendors are collaborating, mostly with the law enforcement agencies, to supply these weapons legally, getting end-user certificates from the office of the NSA to bring these weapons. These are areas of leakages that until we see them and block them, because otherwise we are just looking at maybe from our neighbors they come in. No, most of these weapons, they come in legally, but find their ways to the hands of the illegal persons. So until we're able to do this, because people now have realized if you have a weapon, you have instrument of control that you can coerce people to obey you. And gradually, this psyche of the average person should be addressed, because that's what is increasing the rate of terrorism and banditry and what have you. People have realized that, okay, it is if you have gun that people respect you. The over-militarization of the psyche of the average person is the main problem we're facing in the country. And these centers that have been created, the enabling laws are there. But what should we do? Let us educate the average person to realize the dangers of possessing of these arms. And every agency of the government should be on board in doing this. Otherwise, whatever efforts the government will put in place, I'm telling you, will be in futility. Because of what? The psyche of the average person has realized if you have gone, those in authority, they use it to intimidate people. So the average person is also using it. And that's what the criminals are using. We should ensure that the regulatory agencies, one, should take audit. Because as at now, I'm telling you, Doctor has said it, the number of weapons, illegal ones that are in circulation, are over about 6 million, you have said. Now, for instance, they are in the hands of non-state actors. Look at the danger of that. How do we know and regulate these people? They're everywhere. And these ethnic militias that are coming up, quasi-security outfits by state governments and what have you, are areas that the government should look into. Because if we don't do that, I'm telling you, every person now will feel that he should own a gun in order to protect himself, in order to coerce others and what have you. The US is making it free for people to own guns, but they have regulatory policies that knows this gun is with so-so person. Yes. But unfortunately in Nigeria, even these so-called quasi-security outfits that are being formed by state governments, you cannot determine who is controlling what weapon. Everybody is saying, I'm doing it to protect my state, myself, and what have you. But how long shall we make the psyche of the average person to believe that without weapon, you cannot survive? I think it's high time for us to realize that the best way to understand and develop, there are countries like Australia and what have you, that even crime is not even thriving there. Why can't we understand such countries? Because for me, the level of arms that are being imported into the country is alarming, and the government should do something. The level of over-militarization of the psyche of the average person that is happening currently should be looked into. Otherwise, we are creating an army that cannot be controlled by the government. And when we allow that, definitely it will lead us to anarchy. So these regulatory agencies that have been put by the government, let them look inwards as to the factors responsible for us to be seen that unless you are armed before you are protected. No, that's what we call psychological security. You don't need all that. But the average person in Nigeria is feeling it's a symbol of authority if you have weapons, if you have people armed guarding you. No, create a social networking that will not even require somebody to go and be at your doorstep or to guide you or what have you. Unless we're able to reorient our psyche to realize that psychological security is more important than physical security, then we're in for trouble.
you've talked about things that touch the heart, and coming from a place like Katsina, which hitherto used to be a very peaceful place,
Definitely.
all of a sudden, I think 27 out of the 30 something local governments now, yes, are under under threat. Now, my question is, how do we begin to explore new ways to rekindle?
Excellent.
Rekindle, I want to use that word, rekindle, regional cooperation, and build institutions that are capable of, stopping the proliferation of these small arms into Nigeria.
Excellent.
Because 30 years ago, it was alien to Nigeria to even hear of somebody holding a gun or trying to kill somebody or terrorism.
Even 20 years ago.
Yes, it was alien to Nigeria.
Yes.
This is something we hear happening in other countries, and now it is in Nigeria. And one factor that, contributes to the proliferation of these arms is the borders. And I'm coming to you now, Dr. Adam Abdullahi. Our borders are porous, open to, infiltration by terrorists from outside, from countries around surrounding Nigeria, and bringing in these weapons, selling them. Yes, the government is working hard to make sure that they don't come in. But how can we secure our borders to stop the infiltration of these small arms and light weapons into the country?
Thank you very much. It's a very glaring situation that everybody have attested to. Our borders are very, very porous, and the smugglers of these small arms and light weapons are having their days across our various borders. And what we are trying to see at the strategic level is that border security management is high time that Nigeria try to exploit technology more than ever before. Apart from that, we need to also work together in collaboration with our neighbors. We have more than 1,500 porous borders that are not manned by our people, illegal routes that people can come into Nigeria. And of course, as earlier stated by all the speakers, we have neighboring countries, strategic neighbors, where they're having crisis and all that. So all these weapons actually flow into Nigeria, apart from those that are being imported from outside Africa. But most importantly, interagency collaboration and whole of society approach is what we need. We cannot say we want to secure our border without carrying along the border communities. These are the key people. The work that the border communities can do, I want to say, is of the same with the immigration and customs and any other security agencies that are at the border. So the moment we are able to win the hearts and minds of these border communities, they will be able to work in collaboration with security agencies to be able to secure our border further. But the moment we leave them behind, they are going to be very easy collaborators with the criminals, and they'll be able to make more inflow into Nigeria. But a little away from that is that most time when we talk about proliferation of small arms and light weapons, we always focus on those imported weapons. And of course, about 15% of small arms and light weapons in Nigeria are locally made. They are craft weapons.
Made in Nigeria?
Yes. There's a statistic to that. Small Arms Survey and the National Center for Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons. The report of 2021 actually states that 13 out of 100 Nigerians, they have weapons.
13 out of
firearms, yes, 13 out of 100 Nigerians. And 14% of households in Nigeria, they have firearms in their house.
And why is that?
Simply because we've not been able to, like Kabiru Adamu said, have a very formidable regulatory agency that will be able to do this. By the time the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons metamorphosed into a full commission with the full power And we have regional and states, and of course local government centers where we can actually mop up this, create awareness, and regulate the conduct of our blacksmiths and professional welders. Believe you me, with 20,000 naira, a welder and a blacksmith can, collaborate and bring out a weapon for you in less than 3 hours.
What about the bullets?
The bullets, you see, we have locally made bullets, we have foreign bullets, we have many options of getting all that. And these are professionals in their way. They've studied what they call the street language, the English. The foreign-made weapons are called English. And by the time they see English and they study it, they come up with a good parody of it.
Something close to it.
Yeah, and it's off to the market.
I want to ask, what does English means? Why do they call it English?
Yeah, because in the colonial days, when the colonial, like the AIG said, the Firearms Act of the colonial era actually, ban, and regulate the possession of arms. So to possess English-made weapon was a kind of a thing of a privilege. So when you have a British-made weapon, this is English.
Like a Magnum.
Yeah, so English. So by the time when you go to the street, English, you ask English. So they study the English, I think, and foreign product, and imitate it and come up with an instrument of criminality.
Okay, but that isn't quite as bad as one may think. This is not to deviate from the issue, but if we, rather than the way we go about it, harness the potentials in this regard, that could make for some security and economic gains, don't you think?
Absolutely. You see, we have DICON, and the military industrial complex of Nigeria is evolving. Unfortunately, we did a kind of a disservice to DICON after the war, the Civil War. During the Civil War, DICON actually surpassed its capacity and supply the requirement of the armed forces and all that. But after the war, we lost the political will, and DICON became what it has become today. And we need to do a thorough study and survey to analyze the potentials of Nigerians who can actually work in the military industrial complex and see how we can galvanize DICON and other private, well-vetted private armed production companies where we can fix these people and annex this potential to be able to make Nigeria self-reliant in terms of weapons and military equipment.
Yeah, he wanted to.
Yes, I want to add a little perspective to the point made being made by my colleague here. We must understand one thing. Arms holding per se is not out of context. Only the criminal use deployment of the arms. I can tell you historically, owning arms is part of cultural requirement on some societies in our country and in Africa. Arms were then used for burial, for safari, for hunting, for game, and some other important occasions, like even during Durbar.
Funeral,
Durbar. Weddings, we fire it. But it's the criminal metamorphosis of the usage. That is the thing. And what we need to interrogate is that what makes our people to divert arms from the intentional cultural and gaming use to pure criminal enterprise? That perspective is plenty. One, even some of our political leaders exacerbate this. They give arms to boys and girls, not even only boys, boys, particularly for political purpose. I am aware, I'm from a state where a sitting governor carried armed thugs, hellions on the street, to go and surround the cement factory running in this country in the last 3 or 4 years. A cement factory in operation. a governor arrange non-state actors with then guns. Some of you know the person I'm talking about. That's the same person that authority is asking, please, we have your record here. Certain things went wrong. Please come and put explanation. It's on the run. Where do we go from here? Another thing, you are all aware that conflict entrepreneurs have taken an eminent stand in our country. Some people live on crisis as their means of livelihood, and by so doing, they encourage the circulation, even local manufacturing, circulation and use of firearms. That is one perspective. Another dangerous one is unregulated financial inflow, crypto. Cryptocurrency has taken over, that arms can be bought anywhere and can be easily shipped to anywhere. It's a lot of a diverse situation.
Let me put you on pause here, retired AIG. Let me put you so that you keep your gun. We won't get to all of those, but first let's get quickly to Jos, where Major Gabriel Adofiku has been patiently waiting and listening to the conversation here in the studio. Now, Major Adofiku, we can't talk about proliferation of arms and small arms and light weapons without talking about the porosity of our borders. And why does it seem that the Nigerian borders are difficult to man and manage?
First of all, let me, like you rightly mentioned, I've been patiently listening because I have been enjoying the very educative contribution of our very senior partners out there in the studio. First of all, permit me to say this. Proliferation, 13-letter word. Thank God, NTA, you are widely covering this nation. I want to tell you that a handsome percentage of the guys watching you, particularly the ordinary persons, may not understand what the word proliferation, that 13-letter word. Let me use the street language. Availability, pacha pacha, like we say on the street. Now to the fact of our borders. We have a border stretch in this country, both at the sea side, Lagos, Delta, rivers, cross rivers, and so on to the sub-Saharan, Niger, Chad, Cameroon borders. And these land spaces are such that we have not been effectively positioned to manage. In other words, there are massive ungoverned routes in our boundaries. The statistics are there. Secondly, I want to use this opportunity to say that the institutional control of our borders, the customs, the immigration, the quarantine services, and in recent times, more prominently, the armed forces and the police, we have not been adequately deployed to control our border entries into Nigeria. For example, from Sokoto to Borno, we have over 2,000 routes into this country. And these 2,000 routes, we have less than 1,000 formally covered points. The rest, some are like backyard routes. You sleep in one part of the country, you walk into the one nation, Niger, for example, and then you walk into Nigeria to take your bath. There is no control, effective control on those routes. So the movement of material through these porous structure is a sure fact. However, so much emphasis, even from the discussions we've had so far, so much emphasis have been placed on the institutional control of small arms. The structures have been adequately expressed, but The demand aspect of it has not been appropriately detailed out. The demand aspect of it comes down to, like Dr. Kabiru Adamu said, he referred to it as existential threat. But I want to face it as existential phenomenon. It's a roll-on of a developmental process. Today, the local demand for firearms has increased. This is a fact. Why has it increased? Because the institutional security support system at the local ordinary man's level has virtually failed. And so, people now resort to self-help. That is a side. The second side of it is that the criminal elements in our society have now taken advantage. Permit me to quickly chip in here that next to oil, the fastest, cheapest, and quickest way of making money is arms business. It is under the table. If anybody quotes any statistics to you, that statistics is doubtful. The truth is, it's a trending and festering business. How do we cut this business down? Should be an aspect of our consideration in the proliferation control measures. Now, since 2006, after the ECOWAS Charter, and then 2009 when Nigeria formally, and to date, institutionally, so much has been done. Like my Ogade said, so much has been done. But the institutional cover has not dealt with the demand, the growing demand, which is a new phenomenon in Nigeria. Let me say this not to really scare us, but to state the realities. The average Nigerian is increasingly getting no longer scared of AK-47 pointed at him. A few days ago, there was a report from one of our states that a driver and his passenger got down and took on some bandits on their own and were able to arrest the bandits. People are developing a new psychology, and that is an area we must watch. In other words, we do not desire to get used to weapons. The moment you get used to weapons, then you develop the appetite for weapons. There is a spirit that goes with small arms. This we were taught in our basic days in the military. What is that spirit? The arms you carry gives you a new feeling you are the boss. But the military has a way of training its personnel, which I want to suggest other agencies can also, go dig into and copy. The military has 3 approaches. 1, that weapon is yours for you to use. 2, that weapon is yours for you to be in charge of it. That weapon is also for you to be primarily accountable for whenever asked. And your weapon is the equipment and the bullets. So that control measure has to be sipped down to other agencies so that that other supply channel from the inside, that's the internal supply channel that one of my contributors there mentioned, can be adequately addressed. And then finally, I want to say this concerning the local producers. In my heart, part of our policy should be check out on these local producers wherever found. Arrest them first on the criminal aspect because they are breaching a law, and then follow it up on the developmental aspect of where can we send them to for them to be more useful to us. Let me conclude by telling you, sirs and ma, that I saw Beretta pistol, AK-47, locally manufactured. The only difference with the Croatian and the Nigerian version, the only difference was the serial number on the foreign-made one. So it means there is what you call positive technology, even though in a criminal platform. We can upturn that setup. So the issue of our borders is an institutional something, a policy that we need to quickly review. First, increase the size of our coverage. 2, develop a new synergy between the various segments of forces that manage our boundaries.
Major Adofiku, I'm still going to stay with you. You know, it's something that keeps bothering me. This summit on terrorism and light weapons and firearms that comes into this country, fueling terrorism in the country. And one thing that beats me is that this is a country that went all the way to Liberia, to Sierra Leone, to stabilize the area, bring peace to the area. And now Nigeria from all regions is being faced with terrorism, banditry, kidnapping and all that. And we still can't find a solution. Why is that?
An African adage that says it is easier to shout who goes there when it's outside your house. When it's inside your house, the language has to change because the components now differ. The truth of the matter is the challenge we are going through, if there is sincerity in governance, it can be addressed. It can be solved. I know the military will not come out to advertise what I'm going to tell you now. In the last 3 months, with that presidential directive by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that, look, go out there and deal with these bastards and get them out of the scene, we've been getting good results. When you see outbursts here and there of these criminals, it is just the crying of a dying dragon. They are dying, and they want to make statements that will improve their status. You can see now, they pop up here, they pop up there, or they even shout, assemble themselves, send videos and tell you they are holding a seminar, a workshop for themselves. And these are all instigation. They are known strategies of terrorists worldwide. But I think the truth of the matter is every hand should be on deck. And please, let us remove that in Hausa we say namune factor that comes to play easily when we are dealing with criminals. Criminals, bandits, whatever they are. Thank God they have crossed even our religious definitions. They take anybody and ask for ransoms. Therefore, let us put aside sentiments. Let us put aside emotions. Give all our security agencies the push, the support they need to get these things sorted out. But above all, I want to plead, like one of the contributors there mentioned, at the local governmental micro level, there should be a change. Government should manifest its presence more robustly at the grassroots level. And if that is done, the present situation, within months, will take a difference. Our reaction time.
Thank you very much for your contributions from Jos. Let's get right back here in the studio. Let me engage Dr. Kabir Adamu again. We've raised a number of issues so far in the conversation. We've talked about the porosity of borders. We've talked about the uncoordinated way we are trying to mop up weapons, small weapons and small arms and light weapons. We've also talked about, harnessing the potentials of our own ammunition making skills here locally without even getting elsewhere, which will amount to economic gains and even security gains. But let's talk about technology. What is the role of technology in all of this? How can we deploy technology to good effect to be able to mop up, to discover wherever these small arms and light weapons are stockpiled and be able to, mop up as required, apart from institutionalizing the bodies that have been set up?
Thank you very much. Before I respond to your question directly, there are two areas that I will want to highlight, and at the risk of even being accused of being a mouthpiece of the current administration, the military-industrial complex and DICON. The current administration, if you pick the Renewed Hope agenda, the strategy or the plan it has is to increase local production of both arms and ammunition by 40% by 2027. So everything that Dr. Adam mentioned, the administration has already envisaged. And not too long ago, the president signed, I think, an amended version of the DICON bill. And not only that, he traveled to 3 countries, Turkey, UAE, and I think India, if I remember well. Yes. And at the end of those visits, billions of dollars agreements were signed with those countries to support local production of weapons in Nigeria. And of course, already we've several companies, I'm not sure if they're international, but they're present here in Nigeria. They are working within that military-industrial complex to achieve this policy of increasing local production by 40%. Point I'm trying to make is that it's work in progress, and we must commend the administration for the effort that it's doing. It's a change from what used to be, and I think as Nigerians, when we see positive initiatives like that, we should commend it. It's baby steps. A lot more needs to be done, and some of those things have been mentioned here. If we identify those fabricators, and then I agree, they were operating in a criminal setting, we need the deterrent element within our law will have to apply, so that others who want to do that will not do that. The second thing I also want to mention is the desire of the current Minister of Interior. He's young, he's passionate, and I know this particular issue of border management, he's been he's bothered about it. Here in this studio, when we sat down with the immediate past, I think it was CG Immigration, she reeled out some of the initiatives that the Ministry of Interior intends to do. There is already a plan in place, and I think it's just to implement that plan. So that also needs to be recognized. With regards to your question, technology, so every weapon has a number that it can be identified with. But the challenge is this: the gun running channels that exist operate under the formal systems. So when these weapons come in, those numbers are not documented. And sadly, and this is something that we've also not spoken extensively about, but it's been mentioned, the role that our security agencies also play in contributing to the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, sometimes advertently and other times inadvertently. Between 2018 and I think 2022 or thereabout, the number of armories of especially the military that were violated by non-state actors, and the weapons and ammunition that were in those armories stolen and that have contributed to this proliferation that we are discussing is documented. Not too long ago, the National Bureau of Statistics released an audit report that showed clearly the Nigeria police force contributed. In fact, some of the weapons that were supposed to be in the armory, that were, for some reasons that were declared no longer serviceable, were in circulation. And this is the government department that released that report. Those of us who know Ali Kwara, who is late now, and the cycle that he has left behind, they have documented in incontrovertible terms the linkage between the proliferation and some of our security agencies. So, but all of this and the beauty of, this conversation is that the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons realizes all of these things that we've mentioned, and they've gone ahead. Some of the steps they are taking using technology as an example, for every MDA that has license to carry weapons, they are issuing codes, so that if the police import weapons, there is a code associated with the police. If in the next 20 years that weapon is found outside the police cycle, at least they know where it's coming from. The military, the customs, the civil defense, name them. So all of this is how technology can play a role. Then we can also move to the armory. In modern technology, all armories can what's the word now? You can introduce technology to show when a weapon or when ammunition is retrieved from that armory, and what, of course, when it's brought back or what usage is put into. In terms of forensic, investigation, once you have those numbers and something happens, you can conduct your investigation and then tie it to when that ammunition was brought in, who it was given to, and of course who should have custody of that particular ammunition or the weapon that was used for that purpose. So technology can play several roles in terms of accountability and then in terms of investigation when incidents occur that are tied to the use of small arms or light weapons.
Okay, Dr. Kabir Adamu, the conversation is getting interesting by the minute, and we'd have to take a break right now, but when we return, the conversation will continue as we begin to close down.
All right, welcome back to this last stretch of Good Morning Nigeria this Monday, and we've been discussing checkmating proliferation of small arms and light weapons. A lot has been said already, but let me get to let me get Ibrahim Ahmed Katsina from Katsina State. We've arrived at some very important ends on this conversation, but where do we go from here? How do we get the agencies of government, institutions of government that have been set up? For me, if is it NatForce and the commission that have been set up are not working at cross purposes, I don't think that we have a problem with having a lot of hands, in the till. But how do we get to properly institutionalize these agencies and then get them to achieve the results that we desire?
You see, the problem of Nigeria is not lack of the institutions, but allowing the institution to do the needful. As Doctor has said, and all the speakers have emphasized, we have this National Agency for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons that is trying to transmute into a commission. Let us give it the necessary tools and the enabling environment. I'm telling you it will work. And if the Office of the National Security Advisor should coordinate, I think by the time we give the Office of the NSA the necessary impetus to coordinate all these activities, it will be better for us. Because looking at what is happening in other countries, the Office of the National Security Advisor is the main coordinator of all these activities. And by the time we harmonize the operations, I'm telling you the Office of the NSA will do the needful in providing them with the necessary instruments to work and harmonize their operations. Because what's the big deal? We're all working for Nigeria. If we're working for Nigeria, not for ourselves, why can't we put our heads together and cooperate to do the needful? The simple thing is, most of us that in the positions of authority think we're working for ourselves. Otherwise, if we're working for Nigeria, these institutions, the regulatory frameworks are there for them to operate. My concern is the issue of enforcement. Because the enabling laws, the legislations are there, but the enforcement is weak. If we empower them to do the needful.
What is needed?
Excellent. For them to be more committed. Because the moment you're giving somebody the laws, the regulatory enactments, let them come into operation. For instance now, Doctor has made an observation, and the AIG. These institutional audits of the agencies that are controlling these weapons should be done, say, for instance, annually. And those that are found culpable should be punished. If we set examples that should serve as deterrent to others, definitely people will sit up. Because these leakages that are found, especially in the government institutions, I think that should worry the government. And if there's proper coordination capacity, definitely this institution will sit up. Because definitely if the essence of giving them weapons is for national defense, and they allow these weapons to go into the criminal elements, then why should we allow it? So the issue of enforcement is very key. The laws are there, but the enforcement is weak. And secondly, the issue of citizen participation. My friend Doctor has said it. We should try to ensure that the average person is encouraged to be more patriotic, one, by reporting, two, by observation, three, by participating also. Because unless the average citizen is able to own up that, look, we're all together. Most of the crimes we are having local contents. Yeah. Every crime you see in Nigeria has a local content. They are community-based. So let the communities come up. Let us agree that we want to save our country. But by the time everybody sit behind, waiting for the government and its institution to do the needful, I think we're not helping ourselves. Everybody, the National Orientation Agency now should come up with strategic engagement platforms and enlightenment programs that will make the average person to think Nigeria first. That is what a person that is interested in the future of his country should do. If we put Nigeria first, I am telling you, all these problems we're facing will fizzle out. But the issue is, as the last speaker from Jos has said, we try to incentivize crimes by saying that this person is from my area, this person is from my community. And as I said, all these crimes have local content if we don't support them. Let me give a very good example that happened recently in the Southwest, which should be commended. When this separatist tendency started in Ibadan, the elders there, the community leaders disassociated themselves from these criminal elements. Yes. And that's what has helped greatly in reducing that tendency. If other regions, if others should do the same thing, it's something that should be, in fact, pampered. People should realize that these people have done the right thing. Otherwise, had even they supported them, what is happening in the southeast, what is happening in the north and will resonate there. But the leaders and community leaders there came up and disassociated themselves from them. So most of the crimes we're facing in the country, the local communities are supporting them. And that's why they thrive. All these criminal elements, there's nobody that cannot be traced. There's nobody whose address is not known.
Yes.
Then why can't the communities cooperate with the government? I am telling you, if the communities should wake up and disassociate themselves with these criminal elements, before you realize all these crimes will fizzle out. But the issue is the communities are in most cases complacent and supportive. And that's why the criminals are succeeding.
Or afraid. Some of them are afraid.
It's not the issue of afraid, I'm telling you. It's, it's the synergy. Some people benefit from it. Look at it. Some governors have mentioned traditional rulers are involved. Community leaders are involved. Religious leaders are involved. Is it fair?
Yes.
So what we should do is let us realize that crime doesn't pay. But patriotism and nationalism does.
Yes.
As I said, we should give example of what has happened in the Southwest. They disassociated themselves, and look at it now. Who'll come up from that area to show that he's a criminal again?
And more arrests is being made.
See, in fact, they used to take the security agencies to the houses of these people. And even the families of these people were even sort of shown that, look, you don't belong to us. I think unless we try as much as possible as Nigerians to show that my country first, I don't care whether you are from my religion, you are from my tribe, or you are from my state. No, as long as you are a criminal, you are a criminal. Yes. That's what should be done in this country. And I'm telling you, if we encourage that, the National Orientation Agency should take up this responsibility, and all the agencies of the government. And I'm telling you, the political class also, it's a challenge for them. Because the more they crime, the more the threat for the democracy. So why can't they disassociate themselves from these criminal elements? And all these ethnic militias that are being supported now, I think they should be banned. The government should not allow all these quasi security outfits to exist, because
but where you don't have enough in terms of numbers for the ones that are legitimate.
It's not the issue. You see, the moment you emphasize on militarized approach to security, you are getting it wrong. I said we should emphasize on psychological security.
A total reorientation of the way people think. And I think I agree with you, because we have a generation we call Gen Z that are coming up. They never knew a good Nigeria.
Simple.
They never knew a happy Nigeria. They never knew that a Nigeria was once peaceful.
Simple.
Where the Igbo man can go to the Hausa man's house and eat and sleep.
So
and
with the complete reorientation.
Yes. And we need to look also, as this conversation begins to wind down, I'm going to bring in AIG, retired. When these things happen, like Ibrahim Ahmed Katsina said, the community, most of the time we see them go to seek for the release of these criminals who perpetrate these criminal activities in our society, and most of the time they are released. And we begin to ask ourselves, those that have these weapons, some of them can't even afford it. That boils down to the politics that is played in this country. You know, politics cannot be ruled out of the insecurity that we have in Nigeria today, being fueled by politicians, especially during elections or during campaigns and all that. And these weapons are kept after the campaigns, after the elections. And when will heads begin to roll in Nigeria to ensure that our security, you know, life in this country is kept, you know, I don't even know, because I'm so emotional about it, because I come from a place where insurgency has been there for more than almost 20 years in Borno. When it started, some elders said there are children, we'll talk to them, you know, we'll know what to do. By the time it escalated, it went out of control, and Boko Haram is still there. It has spread to other parts of the north. So how can we maintain a stable society that this generation will look up to one day and say, I live in a peaceful Nigeria?
Thank you. There are many ways of sanitizing this threat and this ugly situation. For example, we should not give room for emergence of people who are criminal sympathizers to become lead agents in our society. There was a state where I served before as a commissioner of police. After I left there, a first-class emir gave title to a bandit leader. I mean, where do we go from there? That's why I say all society approach is key. Furthermore, why is it that as a nation, since our civil war, we've never really gone on aggressive policy of demilitarization or arms mop-up? In my earlier analysis, I say people with arms, they are having criminal instrument already. In a country, one Latin American country, is it Cambodia or Bolivia, when the government wanted people to leave the trade or in cannabis, in cocaine, they have to aggressively tell them they'll destroy the cocaine farm and they'll give them alternative economic empowerment so that they can do legitimate operations, occupations. People are with arms. Why have we as a nation not adopted that policy in a way whereby you return all your AK-47, we as a government or as a country will give you 2 or 3 million naira, and we advise you and monitor you. Go and use that money to begin to start a restaurant business or taxi business or farming. That is one corollary. Why is it that there are some national gaps we have created in the last 20 years? We are unable or unwilling to reverse ourselves. For example, arms in circulation, because we had Nigerian Mining Corporation before. About 20 years ago, one man sat down and scrapped it. After scrapping it, bandits took over our mineral sites with a lot of guns. This is an economic corridor. Why do you abolish Nigerian Mining Corporation? As I'm speaking to you, we don't have a government entity controlling mining. Apart from oil, as a implementing controlling entity, ministry is a policy entity. We had before Nigerian Mining Corporation, we had Coal Corporation. We have Nigerian Granite Board. We have Cocoa Board. Somebody in the last 30 years abolished all those things. It has cascaded into some of the economic side effects, security challenges we are having now. There's nothing wrong in us reversing ourselves. About 18 years ago, somebody decided to demolish all our toll gates on our highway. Why? We can bring them back. Because toll gates were a security instrument. Yes. Because travelers will park, they will eat, they will rest. Security agents will screen you. If they suspect you, they call somebody from Ibadan that you are on your way to a lorry already. Then at a lorry toll gate, you stop for routine check. Sometimes you rest. Sometimes you do your prayers. You break your fast. Somebody on his own decided to scrap all these national institutions, which of course provides security.
Creating a passage.
Free passage for everybody. Who does that? I believe under our New Hope agenda, we'll revisit this issue. Nigerian Mining Corporation, because Mining Corporation, that is a vehicle of mining, government vehicle that is in the field. It's an agency that's in the field taking care of the mines. As I'm talking to you, most of our mines field in the bushes are occupied by bandits. And this thing is escalating arms control. It's escalating arms flow. To the extent that there are some miners who even go to bandits to go and take permit to be in an area. Who does that? So we need to be some of the, that's why I said all society approach is essential. It's not only military approach. Some of these institutional and establishment matters are very key to our national development.
Most of these sites have foreigners there.
Yes, we have most of the foreigners are being provided. They got leeway. Bandits are providing a leeway. I'm talking from practical experience. I don't want to name names of sites. So where do we go from here? Now, most of our people have become informants to criminals. Do you know why it is so? Government instruments of controlling the population, like we in the police, when we join, they want to call information money that used to be available to DPO, to area commander. Is that information money you give to people to give you information about what is happening in the society? Now, if security agents are no longer having information money, bandits are now giving information money to our villagers. Therefore, as your troop take off from the state capital, going towards the local government, as soon as the vehicle passes, they will call them. They say they are coming. The vehicles are 7. We lost some of our military commanders recently. Ambush. And this ambush is orchestrated by local connivance. And the local connivance is becoming exacerbated because the government networking with the community in respect of giving them information money so that they will be loyal to us as a state or as a government has vacated us. And that was not the format of government that our forefathers handed over to us.
All right. Thank you, Elijah Abdullah. Thank you very much. Let's give you a breather here. And let me quickly get to Dr. Abdullah as we gradually wind up this conversation. Now, from what he has said, I'm just trying to say, how effective has it been, the attempts by government to mop up arms from ex-combatants?
Thank you very much. Let me use the Northeast situation as an example. All is not negative. Unlike what we had in 2015, at the peak of insurgency and terrorism in this country, between 2015 and now, we've had about 700% reduction in fatality and 300% reduction in incidents. Attacks have reduced by 300%. The fatality has reduced by 700%. And we have about 200,000 people, ex-combatants and their relatives and others who have, surrendered to the government. We have Operation Safe Corridor, whereby the ex-terrorists, render their arms, and all these are being mopped up into our armories and all that. What we need to do is to give ourselves more impetus on how we can do this aggressively. When this, like the AIG said, when the criminal elements understand the fact that they can surrender to the state and state can give them an alternative life. Like Operation Safe Corridor, we have a lot of skills acquisition that is going on there, and people are being graduated, even though the program is yet to be perfect, because there's also the issue of community integration after the program and how we start these people up. But what I'm trying to say in essence is that we have recorded a lot of success in terms of reduction of attack and fatality, and of course the arms mopping from the ex-terrorists and other criminal elements is getting increased.
Okay.
And we are getting them into our armories and in the safe places. So
That's quite good. You know, Nigerians watching this program now, you know, we will say, okay, things are getting into a better perspective in the area of security. Let's now go to Jos, because we're running out of time, where Major Abdul Fikiu is retired. Is there? Let's talk about, yes, in just 2 minutes, I would like you to talk about, you know, an African solution to, you know, to insurgency. Nigeria cannot operate in isolation itself. So people are calling for an African solution to, you know, proliferation of small arms and light weapons, you know, across the borders in Africa. Do you think it is okay for Nigeria, for everybody to say, okay, when we are at a point where this country needs help from other African countries, we ask for it?
A very simple single sentence. The solution to the crisis in Africa is just one: good governance. And what is good governance? Government, let me use that commonly used phrase, government of the people, for the people, by the people. Government that is legitimate. Government that people take ownership of. From there, they will take ownership of their country. From there, they will take ownership of their continent. From Democratic Republic of the Congo down to our West African sub-region, we have found that most of the crises we have are crises of confidence in governance. And so, single sentence, if you want us to have the kind of Africa we desire in our hearts, the peaceful Africa, the developing Africa, the focused Africa, then is good governance. Secondly, like I did mention earlier on, arms business is good business. And wherever the opportunities for its enhancement shows its head, the world will come for it. And the developed countries take advantage of this. We should make our countries not an attraction to these, what somebody referred to there as crisis merchants to take advantage of our countries. But first, good governance. If we have good governance, believe you me, where we remain sensitive to the present and indeed the future of our various communities, whether in the French-speaking African countries, Portuguese-speaking African countries, English-speaking African countries, the song is the same.
Major General Adofiku, thank you very much for your contributions. We really don't have a lot of time now. But as we round off, let me just take a minute of Kabir Adamu to tell us about the nexus between mining and weapons proliferation and the role of local communities in all of this. In a minute, please.
Thank you very much. Just to emphasize the point made by AIG Abutu earlier on, there is a nexus between illegal mining and the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. The president recently, I think it was at the counterterrorism conference, highlighted that nexus. And in fact, he made it categorically clear that anyone who does not think, cannot make that nexus connection, does not really know what national security means. So we must commend the efforts being made by the Minister of Mines and the presidency in addressing this issue of illegal mining. Anywhere you see illegal mining, then you see the conflict manifesting. And of course, once there is conflict, then weapons proliferation.
So that's something government may need to take care of.
The other one, in conclusion, ethnic communities, and this is based on fact. My company did a research in Cross River State where two communities have been fighting. And what we found out is that communities actually ask their members to contribute money. So from that money, they go to buy weapons. And what they do is to protect themselves without weapons. The second element is to buy influence. So when the members of the community are arrested, they now use that money to, get them out.
You don't know how far that can go.
So point is, there are, in the demand section for weapons, we need to look at all of these root causes. Because it's when we look at them that we can now stop the proliferation.
Dr. Kabir Adamu, security risk management expert, thank you very much for your contributions on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
Let's also thank quickly Ibrahim Ahmed Katsina, retired ADG, Department of State Services, and former security advisor to Governor Masari. We thank you very much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Not forgetting AIG Abutu Yaro, retired AIG Zone 13 and former CP Edo Zamfara and Imo State CP Federal Operations. We thank you for your time and thoughts on today's program. Dr. Adam Abdullahi, Senior Research Fellow and Head of Department, Defense and Security Studies at the National Defense College, Abuja. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you.
And finally, to Jos, where Major General Gabriel Adofiku retired, we thank you for your contributions from that end and pray that peace will reign on the plateau. Thank you very much. That's been Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow is another day. Let's meet here again and talk about national development. Thank you for watching. I'm Victor Azu.
And I'm Jumwe Yusuf. Remember, this is your holy country.